Hi everybody, my name is Shanth Enjeti and I am doing my very first toy review. I don't do toy reviews, but today I wanted to talk about an action figure in my collection that I haven't seen a lot of reviews of. This right here is the Cyberfrog Wave 1 action figure for ages 14 and up, and we're going to take a look at it.
When footsteps fall in eldritch hollows, and spectres flee into the shadows, that is the time when horror's heroes abound, culling the ghouls that go bump in the night.
So when I got this action figure, one of the things that I was the most curious about was how well would it stand how the character Cyberfrog in the comic book by Ethan Van Sciver stands. Cyberfrog is designed so that he can stand up on the balls of his feet, and I wasn't so sure how the figure would work. If we take a look at the figure, you can see that he has the bottoms of his feet right here that he could stand on easily, and then each one of the toes on this action figure is individually articulated. And I was a little bit nervous for how that was going to work out in terms of him standing. But as you guys can see, he's got very long toes, and those toes are actually in there pretty well, so they make for a good option for standing, as you guys have just been seeing. So that was the first hurdle this figure had to get over for me, which was with his feet completely flat and with his toes, down as well. It just looked like he'd be wearing big clown shoes. And so I wasn't so sure how that was going to work out when I got him out of the box. But I've had this out for a little bit, trying to figure it out and play around with it to see how it poses, which I don't typically do because I'm kind of just one of those guys who buys their action figures and sets them up. I'm very much about the sculpt and the paint job, which we'll also get into. But I was really surprised how well he stood up on those toes. Now, he comes with a stand as well, and I'll try to show that to you guys in a little bit. But this, for me, was the first hurdle for this figure. Alright, so let's take a look at some more of this thing and look at the paint apps and the detailing. So, looking at the paint apps for me, and for an action figure from All Caps Comics, which is Ethan Van Sciver's comic book publishing house, and he also releases PVC figures, trading cards, posters, and you can learn more about that on his YouTube channel, which is called Comic Artist Pro Secrets. Ethan is probably best known for his work on Green Lantern, where he was instrumental in designing the Green Lantern emotional spectrum and ring colors. I'm not a huge Green Lantern fan or a DC Comics fan, so I don't know a lot about it, but as far as I understand it, that was the idea that he pitched for Green Lantern that is now a part of the canon. So early on in his comic book career, he created a character named Cyberfrog that was influenced by the 90s image boom. And that character had a very different incarnation. But for me personally, I liked the more mature version of the character that came on the heels of his time working at DC Comics, because I think he had become a better artist, he had become a better storyteller, and the story has a lot more drama in it. So I think it fits in with the stuff that I'm interested in, and that's probably what attracts me to the comic book. Overall, the paint apps on this figure look really good. There's not a lot of overlap of the paint. The silver is really shiny. He's a cybernetic frog, so that's an important part of it. And then, of course, all of the little red details right there. And this is really, if you guys can see the size of my hands holding this figure, this is a really small detail, and I think they did a fantastic job getting this figure painted. Really nice work right there. Now, on mine, there were, and they're small, I don't know if you can see them, but there are these little areas on the chest where there were, let me see if I can make it so you can see it here. There were little areas on the chest that had flecks of silver on them. See, you can probably see them right there. You see those showing up? So I think that right there, and I didn't want to touch those up. There you go. You can see them a little bit better in different light. I didn't want to touch those up because I wanted you guys to see them, because that was probably my only area where I had some paint app issues. But as far as these kind of lightning bolt graphics on the side of the figure, those were great. As far as the little red, dots that are on this figure, I thought those came out really, really nice. And even this texture on the eyeballs, which is great. I actually had the opportunity to do a Cyberfrog trading card painted illustration, and I'll see if I can get that up on the screen for you guys here. Very difficult character to paint because of his complexity and his detail. You can also see that under Cyberfrog's neck, one of the things you have, God, it's crazy to see it through the camera and then look away from the camera. But you can see on Cyberfrog's neck, he's got these little silver cables going up. So there's white and silver there. And that right there might be a place where there's another paint issue. I'm not quite sure where that paint came off right there, which I'm just noticing. I don't know if that's from me putting my thumb under there or something like that. Unfortunately, I didn't just take this right out of the box, so I apologize for that. But I had no idea I was going to even attempt this till very recently. So yeah, so this should give you a pretty good sense of the figure. Now, one of the things that's interesting, and I've been listening to toy collectors talk about this online, I was actually looking at things like mirror chrome, and can you do mirror chrome on toys? And it seems like mirror chrome is an incredibly difficult thing to do. It has a tendency to chip. I've seen some toy collectors and some toy customizers doing things where they go over with a mirror chrome pen, and then sometimes that can slide off. So I was kind of curious how this was going to be handled. And I think it was handled really well. It's got a nice reflective quality to it, and it really works with the character. And what's nice about whatever silver paint this is, I'm not an expert on this particular type of paint, my paintings are all two-dimensional, is the way that it seems to really bring out the texture there and the sculpt. And it's a really nice no-nonsense sculpt. What I mean by that is I'm actually a big fan of different kinds of sculpting technique. If I had to say what are my two favorite toy companies right now, I would say NECA and their Universal Monsters stuff is fantastic. So I love NECA toys. Also their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stuff, the Mirage Studios stuff is fantastic. Outside of that, I would say the Four Horsemen. I love their literature-based action figures. So Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is a great action figure that they did recently. And in addition to that, I love their Headless Horseman figure. So that's kind of where I come down. Outside of that, I'm also a huge fan of Madball's, artist and creator, James Groman stuff. He also does a lot of custom vinyl toys, King Corpse and My Mad Monster. Now, James Groman said recently, and I wasn't sure what he meant, but he said that he is a very heavy-handed sculptor. And I guess that means he's got his own style. That's why you hire James Groman. The thing that was interesting about that was I realized that he's one of the few artists who I think really pulls off heavy-handed sculpting, and I absolutely adore his stuff. But more often than not, I was always a fan of texture where there should be texture, and then smooth design where there should be. And for me as an artist, I guess maybe that's because it makes it easier to use things like this for reference. So let's go over the articulation on this figure right now. So this figure has a nice sort of, and you guys are going to know this stuff better than me, but you're able to pivot the thigh joint out. Is that even what that's called? Where the leg goes in. It's not a ball joint, but it does move back and forth, and then it also moves out. So you can get Cyberfrog into a lot of different poses, but then there's also a thigh cut right here. Guys, this is my first review. You can tell I have no idea what to call these things. I apologize. I enjoy watching toy reviews, but I do not know how to do these things. So it's got a nice cut right there, so you can swivel the leg. So it's quite posable. And then there's a double knee joint right there as well. So I think there's a lot of posability with this figure. And I think, is there another cut there? Okay, so there's not, I don't think there's a cut on that lower part. I don't even know, and forgive me if I should know, I don't even know what you would do that for, because there's another pivot right there, and then it also rocks. So I think this right here is almost the same kind of joint that you've got right there. Oh my God, and then I didn't even notice, this also pivots. Holy cow. Now, I don't know how that's going to work. These aren't, let me just double check. I think that's a ratchet joint on the knees. And again, guys, apologies for my lack of toy terminology here. I'm a painter. I'm a comic book artist. I do a comic book called Nosfero the Crypt Walker. And not only do I not understand 3D artists, I think they're brilliant I admire toy sculptors and toy makers so much, but it's like magic to me. But I just am amazed by people who can go in depth on these things. I watched your YouTube videos if you do this type of amazing content. So yeah, so there's a lot of articulation here that I would be curious to know. See, yeah, he's still, even after I mess with that, I can still stand him. Let me show you his feet right here. Hang on a second. Let me move this down. There you go. I was still able to stand him up with that. So they're pretty tight joints, which is nice. They're not ratchet joints, though, for all this stuff. Obviously, I don't know how you would do that. Maybe somebody knows with these toes. But, I mean, I was talking about them before, so let me show you those. The toes are all individually articulated. That is insane. That is a really, and it makes total sense for this figure. I mean, I would love to say that you'd have to do this. I also have a Cyberfrog PVC over there. But I don't know if you'd have to do this, but I'm glad that that happened. And it's kind of amazing that these toes that individually articulate are strong enough to where I can just stand them right back up. It also comes with a really cool figure stand, and I think they're the same. I also got the Heather Swain figure, but this is the cool thing about it. It stands without it. When I'm setting up action figures, I'm not really a big fan of clutter. So when I have figures that need a stand, it's kind of a pain for me because it takes up more space, and I don't have a ton of space. And I do like the clean look of figures that can kind of stand on their own. So if that's something you're concerned about with this figure, my experience with this particular action figure is it stands just fine. Like I said, it's been on my desk, and I've been checking it out to see if I could work up the courage to do this, do a toy review. So let's take a look at the arms here. Oh, I should also point out, the figure has an ab crunch in it. And again, I don't want to force that, but I don't think there's a lot of ab crunch movement there. So if you need to have an ab crunch, and that's a big thing for you, I've had mixed results with ab crunches. Sometimes I get a figure that's a really great sculpt. I'm thinking of the NECA Frankenstein. There's which is breathtaking. Love that figure. You get a really good ab crunch in it, but it's got this rubber costume. I wouldn't change a thing about it, but you really aren't going to get very far with it. I used to like the ab pivot thing, but I don't know if ab crunch is my bag. And this doesn't seem to have an ab pivot of any kind. And I think maybe that's just to make room for the ab crunch. I think a lot of this stuff might have to do with the design, because he's got these sort of pouches around his waist right here that remind me a little bit of the Mike Zeck Punisher design that he would do. So really nice stuff. And then with the arms, he's got the similar joint. I don't know if you call this a ball joint. It's got the rotation right there, and then it also has the ability to go in and out a certain amount. Now, here's an interesting aspect of this. He has these fins. The character of Cyberfrog has these fins that are coming off the shoulders right there. On mine, one of the things I noticed was from laying down in the package, or if I lay him down on my desk, they did get a little bent out, and they're supposed to be straight. This one, I think, was more bent in the package. I haven't tried to blow dry them to see if they straighten out, but they seem like they're on there pretty good. They're a little bit more of a rubbery material. They look good, and I wasn't too bothered by that, but I thought I should point that out just in case anybody is curious what they're made of. So this right here is a harder plastic, and then these right here look like they were glued in. I'm pretty sure they can't come out. And actually, this is a good chance to show you the ab crunch on the back, and then that silver detailing going down his spine to really play that up. And my guess would be, I haven't tried it out yet, but that right there is a port to put the stand into the figure. So yeah, I don't know what that, I think that's what that is. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure, guys. Overall, I think the detail on the figure is really nice. There's not a lot of aging or distressing or anything on the figure. The paint app is really clean. If you're the kind of person who enjoys that kind of thing, that's something to consider. I know that for me, and just to go way, way back, I have an old Mezco figure that cannot stand for the life of it. This is the Mezco Wolfman figure. It's a pretty large-scale figure, and it can't stand up. But they had two versions of it. One where he had this white shirt that's kind of torn up, and another one where it was covered in blood. And I just prefer my toys clean. I don't know if I'm into having them have the gore and everything all over them. You can customize that stuff yourself, but that's the thing about this figure that I really like. I think you guys can see right there. He's standing incredibly well. I'm actually really impressed by that. Hopefully this is giving you guys a little bit better of a look at this action figure. Now, here's some stuff I haven't done, and I'm a little nervous to do, to be honest. The things we do. I'm taking out the 2 heads. One of them is a wounded, speaking of blood. One of them is a wounded head where he's got a stinger from one of the Vespas. Oh, that'll help. I can see how the head is attached. The other head that I have right here is him showing his teeth and gritting his teeth. So let's take a look at this here. And so you've got the teeth on him. You can also see the eyes and the texture on the figure. So if you want the gritting teeth, you know, a lot like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Cyberfrog has teeth. It's just one of those comic conventions, and I think this is a slightly different expression. One of his eyes is bigger and the other eye is smaller, so it's like he's kind of mad. If you buy this figure now, I think you can get all this stuff on Big Bad Toy Store or on the Cyberfrog All Caps Comics eBay store. But this is his arm can turn into all kinds of tech, and so this is sort of like an arm cannon that you can put on. This is a very detailed, intricate gun, and then look at that gold on the end right there. If you're the kind of person who likes your weaponry with a little bit of a black wash over it to pull out some of the detail, this doesn't have it, so you're going to have to do that yourself. Again, for me personally, I think of the Cyberfrog character as being very clean and very chrome and very hyper-futuristic shiny. It's a little bit more clean or crisp when I think of the character design. So one of the other things that comes in the package is the base of the stand, and I think it looks really cool. One of the things I think is that Ethan, as a artist and as a creator, he had wanted to do Cyberfrog toys, and he almost had a deal for Cyberfrog toys, I think, in the 90s. Someone can correct me about that if I'm off. And so this was kind of a dream of his, and I think he just thought, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all out. And, you know, this is interesting, too. I just noticed that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 places where I think you're probably able to put the stand in. But I don't know. Really nice texture, guys. Look at that. Really good texture. Toy reviewers, I do not know how you do it. God bless you all. So right here, you've got to look at the 2 alternate heads, hand cannon, and then, of course, the base for the stand. Now I'm going to take out the alternate hands. I don't know if I already switched out the hands. I don't think I did. I know I haven't switched out the heads, but so here is sort of a gripping hand. So the hands aren't posable like the toes are, but you do get options. You get 3 sets of hands. And I don't know if that was when the Indiegogo for this was done, if that was something. I think they always came with that, but so there you go. There's the other gripping hand. And then here is one of the fists right there. So there's a fist hand. So if you like the clenched fist look with the figure, I do want to point this out though. Hold on a second, see if I can pull this off. The fist is not one solid piece. The thumb is floating off of it, so I just think that's a nice detail right there. So you've got this little gap right there, because Cyberfrog's hand probably wouldn't be completely closed and completely smooth like that. And it's, I don't know, I like that. That's a kind of a nice. There's a gap between the fingers if I can get that to focus. There we go. Yeah, there is. Very nice detail. I like that. But here is the figure stand right there. I'm going to take this. I would probably put it right there. These are hexagons right here. And then the peg for it, I think it's just a circle. And maybe that makes it so that you can rotate it. So right there, you can sort of see how it goes in to the base right there. If you want to have your Cyberfrog figure up in the air and jumping around and things like that, then you can just clip it right onto the midsection. I do know this from toy collecting. I am what's called a vanilla poser. It just means that I tend to stand my figures up. I don't go into crazy poses and do toy photography. But there you can see his feet are not touching the ground, and the stand holds him up really well. This is probably the lamest action pose ever done in a toy review. First attempt at this, and probably my last. So there he is with the stand, and there he is doing his thing right there. So if you guys want to see a side view of it, it holds pretty well. I mean, that's a pretty sturdy, from what I can tell, that's a pretty sturdy stand. Let's see what this does. Oh, wow. Okay. There's a lot of figures I have that absolutely require a stand, and I don't really like that. I like my figures to be able to stand. I like if the stand is an extra. The 4 Horsemen figures stand up pretty well, but the Mezco figures are an absolute nightmare, particularly the ones with cloth goods and skinny legs. They may be really posable, but they're absolutely useless at standing. I end up having to lean them against stuff, and they always are falling over, which I find really annoying as a toy collector. So I can appreciate the attention to detail that Mezco does, but sometimes the practicality. I'm looking at you, Batman 1989 figure, and the first edition of Doc Nocturnal, which that thing is absolutely useless trying to stand up, and it's very frustrating. But my NECA Frankensteins do pretty well. I do like a figure that can stand up on its own. So here you go. So here is Cyberfrog on the stand. Pretty cool. I gotta say, it's pretty cool. So let's try to swap some stuff out. God help me. One of the most nerve-wracking things for me with toys is trying to swap out parts. So this could be... Oh, okay. So this is my first time doing that. This is my first time taking the head off. Was shockingly easy. That actually worked pretty well, and almost looks like a tragic end for Cyberfrog. I don't know if that's how the story ends, but yeah, that would be really sad if it just ends like that. So stay tuned. Oh, wow. Okay. That went on really easy. Oh, I should also point this out, because this is something that I didn't think about when I was talking about articulation, because again, never done this before. You're not going to get a lot of movement out of the head on Cyberfrog. And that has to do with partially the design, but of the character in the comic books. But it also has to do with the way that the sculpt came together. That neck, which is like a frog and a human, is one of the cool parts of the design, just like a frog. He's got that quality to it, but it just also means you've got very limited movement with the head. And it's a little bit like that ab crunch. It's there, but you're not going to get a ton of movement out of it. So if that's something that is a big concern for you, just something to note when you're looking at this character. What I will say is nice about it for someone like myself is that it's not nearly as hard to take this head off and put it back on. And it feels, I mean, it's on there. But it wasn't a nightmare to take off, which I really appreciate, because I have certain figures where I just have to say a couple of Hail Marys before I try to take the head off the figure. I'm worried it's going to just snap or break. So far with the heads, I have not had that problem. We'll see when I get to the hands. Now I'm nervous. Okay, all right, came right off. So there you go. All right, so let's try another one. Okay, so this one, I don't know if this, is it on all the way? Let me just double check. I think it is. Wait a second. I don't think it, no, it's not on. Okay, this might be the one that gives me trouble, or I've just pressed my luck too much. Is that on? Okay, yeah, it's on. This one, I feel like it has a little bit more movement to it. I don't know if that's the expression, or if I didn't get... No, I did get... No, it... I spoke too soon. This is going to be the head that gives me trouble. All right, so I'm going to do that first. I think I lined it up well. I think it's on. So this is the third head that you get right there, where he's sort of stabbed through the head by a stinger. And then there's some blood on there. Again, because it was a bonus head, I didn't mind. He's got the blood on him, but I'm one of those guys where if I was going to put blood on a figure or do something custom like that, I prefer to do it myself, but that's not... It's the whole point of this head. Like, he's injured, he's got to have blood, so that's totally fine. But I think it looks really cool as an alternative if you're into that kind of thing. This is the head I will use the least for this figure. I'd say the one I'm going to probably use second least is the one with the expression, even though I do like the teeth. I just think that this simple look is the one for me. Yeah, that's the head that I'm probably going to go with when I'm setting this figure up and putting him over there by the Heather Swain that I have right now on my bookshelf. But it's another great figure, and so for me, this is the Cyberfrog I know from Blood Honey. And for all of you guys who were there and backing that book way back in the day for the initial launch and have the chromium cover, it's incredible to see this thing come together. So let's take a look at these hands here. Now, I've never taken these hands off before, so let's see how this goes. I think I haven't. Will this be tragic? Oh, I hate doing this. Okay, looks like it worked. As a toy collector and as somebody who just really enjoys this hobby, see, it's got a little joint right there, and these things make me oh, okay, cool. Went right in. So here is the fist hand right there. So for folks kind of curious what it looks like, oh, see there you can really see that the fingers are individual on this, so that there was no, I mean, that's a nightmare to paint, sculpt, and cast. Looks like I have a little bit of that metallic green paint on this hand. So there's a little bit of a paint app issue right there, and that's not for me moving it around. So let me try the, gosh, now I can't remember which one I did. Oh, wait, okay, so this one right here. So this is the more closed, like gripping hand one. So I imagine he could hold, I don't know, a weapon or Heather's arm or something like that if you were posing this figure. Let me make sure I line this up with my reading. Oh, yeah, these go in really, that's great. Yeah, these are not nearly as nerve-wracking as some of the figures that I have in terms of putting them together. So there he is. He's holding a chicken leg or something like that. I'm actually pretty impressed with how easy as far as putting on the new heads. So now that we've had a chance to look at this, let me move this down here so that you can see all of the things that come in this set. Here's the cannon. Oh, I didn't do the cannon yet. Hang on a second. So here is that hand cannon right there on Cyberfrog. So there you go, guys. Very cool. So there you go. So there he is. If you need him to just kind of, hey. I don't know what Cyberfrog's voice sounds like, but there he is. I know I would have loved that when I was a kid. There were these figures called Battle Beasts, and they had this one character, I think it was supposed to be like a weasel, had a machine gun hand, and I thought it was just awesome. So, I mean, I'm sure I would have loved that when I was younger, but there you go. I mean, when you're born in the 70s, you remember the heyday of 80s toys, and so we have toys now we couldn't have dreamed of. And I think this is probably a dream come true for Ethan in terms of seeing his comic book creation come to life as an action figure. But I'm hoping that this has been, helpful for you guys in terms of, if you're interested in this figure, or if you're on the fence about it and you kind of were curious about it. So final thoughts on Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog action figure. I think it looks great. I think it's easy to pose. I think that it's easy to change out the parts. And I don't really use figure stands, so it's a little bit of a relief to me that these individually articulated toes still allow for the figure to get into some incredibly cool poses. The individuated toes that come with the figure really are strong enough to have him stand up in some cool poses. So that right there is the All Caps Comics Cyberfrog action figure from Wave 1. I think it's available on the official All Caps Comics eBay store, which I think is Cyberfrog 9. And then I think you can still get these at Big Bad Toy Store. So if you go there, I think you can find them as well. But again, I have to say it's impressive. It's a family business. This is something that is Ethan's first wave of toys. I know he's got another toy campaign going on right now for a character called Rainbow the Brute. And I'd be really curious to see how that figure works. I think that figure looks like a lot of fun. It's a little bit stockier of a figure, but I ordered one of those, so I'll be getting that. And maybe I'll do a review for it if I ever do another toy review again, because this stuff is not my specialty. My name is Shanth Enjeti, and I have a YouTube channel called Shanth Enjeti Art. Please subscribe if you have not. I'm going to be doing all kinds of exciting things. I've got a new show, and that new show is going to be Forget Everything You've Been Taught About, which is inspired by the fact that I taught college for 18 years. I have a master's degree and a BFA, and I wanted to create a show where I can essentially push back on the revisionist history of postmodernism. I'm going to have topics like Forget Everything You've Been Taught About Mary Shelley, Forget Everything You've Been Taught About Frankenstein. In addition to that, I have a comic book called Nosfero, the Crypt Walker. It is a fully painted comic book, and it is a beautiful pulp adventure story. If you like pulp action adventure stories, you'll really enjoy this book. My YouTube channel, Shanth Enjeti Art on YouTube. I'll try to put the link in the comments for this. I do live streams where I'm painting, and I also do a show on Thursdays called Pizza Live, where we watch public domain horror movies and hang out with the chat. So it's a lot of fun. It's very much a comic book pulp and sort of horror themed YouTube channel. So go by and check it out, and I think you will enjoy it. So as I always like to close my videos from the heart of Lovecraft country and the birthplace of American religious liberty, my name is Shanth Enjeti. You've been watching Shanth Enjeti Art and a toy review video. I will probably never do this again, and I hope you've enjoyed this while it lasted. This is the Cyberfrog action figure. So let me just say, for all of you guys watching, speak easy, stay gold, keep the faith, and from Cyberfrog to you, peace be with you guys. Take care, everybody. Bye.